items that we'll cover include the upcoming changes to the CaFÉ site for administrators, specifically the upcoming changes to the jury administration page. As we mentioned, there's going to be a new design and interface to the CaFÉ site for administrators. This specific update will only change the administrator side, the side that you see when you update and administer your calls. This is not going to affect the artist side or the juror side, and the major processes you have will not change. This update is largely cosmetic, and as you will see, we have new colors and designs of the pages. There are a few things that might change in your workflow, which we've done only in the hopes of improving your experience using CaFÉ, and we will update you when we have a more specific date. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll start by logging in and giving you a quick overview of the new user interface. I'll go through this part pretty quickly as it will be a review for most of you, but if you want to see this part more in depth, you can watch the recording of our last webinar on our YouTube channel. So as you can see, the login page looks the same, the previous page. And then when you log in with your existing username and password, you'll see the new colors and the overall new design. The navigation menu, which used to be at the top, has now been moved to the left-hand side. This menu is collapsible, so just go ahead and click on these 3 lines of the top left to open and close the menu. I prefer leaving the menu closed when I'm working on a specific page so that I can see the entire page a little bit better. This menu has the same tabs and subtabs as before. You've got events, which has the management, communication, and coupon pages. Under jury, you have administration and jurors. And then, of course, reports, you have event data report, income breakdown, and events communication bounce report. And just as before as well, you have the ticket tab, which you can send us a ticket if you need assistance, and the help center tab, which takes you to our help center. That pretty much concludes the review. Other than that, there's the logout tab at the top right here, but that's all you really need to know about what's changing in the overall design. I'll now go over the jury administration page, which is what we are talking about today. I will make sure I'm on the jury administration tab, which I am now, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and close the menu. And then I'll go ahead and select our call from the current event drop-down list. The page will load and you'll see the basic details of your call on the top right-hand side. So you'll see your call name here. You'll see the call status, which refers to the status that your call is, whether or not it's active or inactive. You'll have your jury status, which refers to the status of your actual jury process, whether it's in progress, not yet started, or complete. It'll also show you the number of applications in the round of jurying you currently have, and then it'll show you the jury round here. It'll also list the jury type, whether or not your call is active by artwork or by artist or application. And then finally, you have the scorecard style, which was previously called scorecard view. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but it'll just show you here what kind of scorecard view you have for your jury. This section basically gives you an overview so you can see at a glance how your jury is set up. The next thing that you'll see that is different, instead of having this page separated into step 1, step 2, and step 3, we split it up into 3 different tabs. So we have the Setup tab, the Manage tab, and the Finalize tab. So this is the major difference to this page than how it was before. And we just hope it helps break out your workflow a little bit more clearly so that when you first start your jury, all you have to worry about is the Setup page. Once your jurors score the entries, you can move on to the Manage page. And then finally, once you have your results, you can move on to the Finalize page. And I'll go through what each of these pages mean. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and point out some other things on this page we have. You can click on View Scored Applications. And when I scroll down, you'll see that this pulls up the table of applications submitted to your call. This will show you all the applications that are currently in the received status. So just like it is on the current version. As a reminder, only applications in the received status are visible to the juror, and therefore the only applications that you'll see in this jury administration section in this table are the ones in the received status. This table will show you the application ID number. You can actually click on the ID number from here and view the artist application, the thumbnail of the image. If it's multiple images, whether application where it groups multiple images together, you'll see the first image here as a thumbnail. But if you click on it, you can open up the enlargement and click through all the different images. And then it will also show you, of course, the name of the artist, the category, if applicable, which category they're in, and then the average score. If you have multiple jurors, the score will be averaged. Otherwise, it'll just be the same score given by the juror. And then next to that is the actual column where it shows each juror and the score that was given by them. It'll also show any comments given by the juror. If you don't have any scores here, you won't see anything listed. That just means that the juror hasn't scored yet, so it'll just be blank. The final column here on the right shows the current status of the application, which should be received, since, like I said, only applications marked as received will show up in the juror page. You can change the status of the application here, maybe if you know for certain that it's meant to go to waitlist, invited, or not invited. However, since any changes you make to this status here will update automatically, as soon as you change it, the entry will be taken off of this page since it's no longer marked as received. So you can always go back and retrieve it from the events management page, but just so you know that this change happens automatically, so proceed with caution in that sense. All right, so lastly with this table, I'll just go over that you can filter by categories if you have them enacted. So you can go ahead and just select to view all in the one certain category. And then if you don't have categories enabled, this won't even be here. You can also sort this table by clicking on any of the column headings. So you can sort by application ID number. You can click on the name column to sort by alphabetical last name. You can also sort, for example, by average score. So if I click on that, it'll show me the lower scores first, and I'll click again to show the higher scores first. Same thing with the status, they're all received. So you can sort by any of these first column headings here. And that's pretty much it on this table. This just gives you a basic overview of the scores that are coming in, and it allows you to see and sort by score the different applications, which might help you in your process to sort the entries between invited and not invited. And then if you want to hide this table, you can just click Hide Score Applications, and you'll see it gets removed. Now I will go over the setup process. So when you're first starting out on CaFÉ and you're ready to start your administration process for jurying, you're going to go to the jury administration page, and you'll already be on the setup tab. The setup tab here, you have different settings. These are pretty much the same as what you have currently, but there are some differences. I'll go through each of these settings and buttons and tell you what they mean. Later on, once the changes are enacted, we'll be sure to conduct another webinar that actually goes in depth into the process of administering your jury and the steps to take while using this new interface. But for now, I'll just kind of show you what each of these settings mean. We'll start in this tab, obviously setup. And here is where you'll choose your settings and preferences for your jury. This is pretty much everything that's in the current step 1 / set up the jury section. Under jury settings here, the first that you have is the jury status. So when you first start your call, this will be actually set to not yet started. When you're ready to start your jury, in order to give the jurors access, you'll set this to in progress. Setting this to in progress also hides the statuses of the artist application so they can't see their status their app is in while you're in jurying. Once you're done scoring and your artists have been notified of the results, you'll return to this setting and change it to complete. Changing it to complete then makes the statuses visible to the artists. To help you remind yourself which status needs to be used when, we have this little helpful thing here, the View Jury Workflow button. You can click on this and it essentially just tells you what the statuses mean and whether or not the statuses of the application will be visible to the artist. So you can see not yet started, applicants may be submitting. Once you're in progress, the results are hidden to the applicants. And then once you're complete, the results will then be revealed again. The next thing we have is the scoring rate, yes, no, maybe, or you can do 1 through 7 or 1 through 20. Only you can set this scoring rate as the administrator. So you might just want to talk with your jurors to decide which scoring rate they'd rather score their entries with. If you have multiple rounds of jurying, you can also change the scoring rate in between rounds. Maybe you start off with a yes, no, maybe, but then as you're narrowing it down, you might want to go to 1 through 20 or 1 through 7. The scorecard style is next, which has changed a bit in terms of its name. So this used to be called scorecard view, and the 3 options you had were monitor, projection, and gallery. But now the options are the same, but the names are different. So first here we have slideshow view. This is what we used to call monitor view. Under this style, the juror sees the entries against a dark gray background, and they are displayed one after another as a slideshow where the juror clicks to go back and forth between the entries. List view is what we used to call projection. This style displays the entry to the jurors against a white background. And instead of showing one entry after another in a slideshow format, they are displayed one after another in a list. So this list is 20 entries per page, so the juror can scroll up and down between entries. And then finally, what we used to call gallery view is now called grid view. This option is only available to jury by artwork calls and displays the entries to the jurors so that they are only seeing the thumbnail images in a grid of 20 per page. They can then more swiftly score the entries in bulk, with the options, of course, to view more information about the artist or application. While I won't go more into depth about the differences between these scorecard views, it's important to know that they haven't changed, only the names have. So we just think these names are better and more accurately describe the scorecard options. Next, we have the scorecard sort. This lets you choose the order the applications will appear to the juror. You can choose to display them in alphabetical order by artist last name, by application ID number, or by random. Previously, this setting could only be edited by CaFÉ staff, but once these changes are made, you'll have the ability to sort the scorecard the way you want it. If you choose to sort the scorecard by random, you'll then get this button to click to actually randomize the order of the applications. The next setting we have here, this is technically new, although it's always been an option. Here you can set the blind jury process to active. This will hide the artist names from the juror. So where before you could check a box where it would indicate you wanted to hide artist names, now you just set this setting to active to conduct a blind jury. Below that, we have the juror round. This allows you to set the jury to a new round. You'll start at 1, and once your jurors have scored and you've narrowed down the entries, you can set this to round 2. Changing the round will reset the juror scores so that they have a clean slate when they score again. You won't actually erase the scores from the first round, but the jurors will see a fresh scorecard when they return to the entries. You don't have to set a new round, though, if your juror prefers to see the previous round scores and simply update them in the what would be round 2. So here you'll see round 1 and 2 as options, but if you start scoring in round 2, save the page, you'll then see the option for round 3, and then so on and so forth for as many jury rounds as you need. Those are the basic jury setup settings. Next, we have the scorecard display. So here are the options, just as we've had before, where you can select any pieces of information you want to hide from the jurors. That hasn't changed, so you still have to make sure that you're checking the boxes off of the things you want to hide rather than show. So you can hide any of these basic details about the artwork. And as you can see, we removed the option to hide the artist artwork since many folks accidentally clicked on that and the images weren't displaying to the jurors. And it was just because they had selected this accidentally to hide the artist art. We know that that's not actually anything that anyone wanted, so we just decided to get rid of that option. Next to that, too, is the same concept, but for the application questions. So you can check the boxes next to any of your application custom questions so that all of them that you created will be listed here, and you can check off the ones that you want to hide. Perhaps there's some questions that you created that are just irrelevant to the jurors, so you don't really need them to see it. Or maybe their information, if you're conducting a blind jury, maybe you remove their resume, for example, so that they don't see the answers or the name, I guess. Below this, all that you really need to know is the save button right here. So if you've updated any of your jury settings, your scorecard display or application display settings, just be sure to click the save button. The last part of the setup process, let me go ahead and hide this. Once you've done all this part, you will see at the bottom of the page is the jurors. So this is where you will assign the jurors to your call. When you first start out, there'll be no jurors listed here, and then you can just click the Add Juror button. And then this will take you to the page where you create the username and password for the juror and enter the information. And if you need to make any changes to the profile, you can click on the juror's name here and you can update the information. You can also click this trash icon to remove the scores from the juror. This will remove the scores from the actual entries, so they're not taken into consideration. But as you can see, once I've removed the scores, the trash icon becomes a little restore icon. So I can click that and it'll restore those scores. So no big deal if you accidentally remove the scores, you can go ahead and restore them if you need to. I will point out too that even though these changes are being made to the system, you will still have all the same juror accounts that you've created in the past. So to view your list of juror accounts, you just have to go to the jury tab and the jurors tab. Again, this page looks like the old style, but we'll be updating it to the new one. You can view your list of active jurors, or you can click to show disabled jurors. If you have a juror that is regularly scoring for you, maybe you have an annual show with the same juror. If you go in there and click edit, you can just make sure you go and check the box next to the new call that you're doing so that they're given the jury access to view the entries. And then you can just click edit to save those changes. So I'll go ahead and go back to the main page. I'll now go over the next tab that we have, which is the Manage tab. So this tab pretty much combines what you used to do in step 2 and step 3 on the current version of CaFÉ. Basically, this page has the tools to be able to sort your entries within the current round you're scoring in. So you'll see that it says current round here at the top. That's just to remind you that you're currently working in the round, and you can view which round you're in by going to the overview at the top right. You will see these 2 buttons, change status to not invited and change status to invited. This is the same process that you used to do under step 2, this change status to not invited. So this is where you set a cutoff score, and any entries below that score will be moved to the not invited status. This allows you to narrow down your selections, and if you choose, either move to the next round of jurying so you can even further narrow it down, or if you're ready and everything left needs to be invited, you'll then come here and go to change status to invited. This replaces what the button used to be called as Finalize. We've just changed it to call it what it is, which is changing the status to invited. And then this lets you set a cutoff score for which any entry above it will move to the invited status. We rearranged and renamed these buttons like this because we knew not everyone wanted to sort their entries in the same order. Some like to weed out the not invited entries first and then move the rest to invited, whereas others like to select the entries that they were selecting and inviting first, then move to the rest to the not invited. So now you can go to whichever button you want first to sort the entries based on their scores. I'll go through what each of these pages look like, but I'll first cover what's left in this page. So essentially you need to know that these are the 2 buttons used to be change app status and finalize, but now you can do them in whatever order you choose. The last button we have on this page that's different is the download juror scores. When clicked, this will automatically download the scores from the current round that you're in. So there's still the option later on that I'll show you where you can download the scores from all rounds or multiple rounds, but this is more of a shortcut to get the spreadsheet of the scores entered by the jurors for the round you're currently in. So if I were to click this button, it would just auto start the download of the spreadsheet. This can help you determine the cutoff score by looking at how many entries received a certain high or low score, and then figure out what score you need to be your cutoff score. So I'll now go through each of these actions, and I'll show you how those pages have been updated. So when I click on change status to not invited, close that. You will see that the page looks similar to how it looked before as terms of the setup. The table will first show you if you have separate categories. for your entries. And the first thing you'll need to do if you have categories enacted or enabled, you'll just go ahead and click the categories that you want to be updating the statuses first. You can also click at the top to select all of your categories at once. And then for each category and then the total at the bottom, it'll show you how many applications have been scored, the average score for all of the entries within this category or total. And then it will show you the minimum cutoff score. So the minimum cutoff score is what used to be called the removal threshold. This default number in this box is the average score, but you can update this and change it to determine your own cutoff score for what the entries need to be in order for it to be not invited. The number that you enter here means that any entries below that number will be moved to not invited. All others will remain. So for example, if you want all entries scored below a 4 to be quote unquote eliminated, anything 4 and above to remain for the next round, you'll set your minimum cutoff score to 4. And then one thing I'll remind you here, if you're using a yes, no, maybe system, yeses are equal to a 3, maybe are equal to a 2, and no's are equal to a 1. So in this step, if you want to eliminate all entries that scored a no, but keep your yeses and maybes in the running, you'll want your cutoff score below a maybe, which is a 2. So then you'll just set it to a 2. So all entries scored below 2, aka all entries with a no, will be moved to not invited. So I'll just set the minimum cutoff score on all of these to 2. And once you enter your new cutoff score, you'll see that these numbers updated automatically, and you can see the number to be not invited. So these are the number of entries that will be removed from the current round, and you'll see how many remain. We have new is that it'll show you the percentage. So if you know you want to be cutting your entries in half for the first round, you can update the numbers and try to figure out what would be half or something like that. You can see that once we've entered the cutoff score, there's no longer the button that says update since it updates automatically. And then previously there used to be a button called preview, and this time we've just changed it to show applications. So that's the button that you'll need to click to move on. This will pull up all of the applications. It'll show you the total number at the top and then the total that will be moved to the not invited status based on what we entered up here. And this table will then just show you the scores in all the entries, and it'll show you that the status will become not invited. So you can just go through here and be certain that, okay, everyone that scored a no or maybe a no and a maybe, anything that's with this low score are going to be moved to not invited. You can also come to this status drop-down list, and if you know that you're going to be moving them to the wait list or something like that, you can go ahead and update it here. Otherwise, you can just leave it as is. And then once you've confirmed everything and you're good to go, you just click the change status button. And I'll do that. And you'll see you'll have this success message that you've moved your applications to the not invited status. If you need to reverse it, that's no problem. You can just go back to the events management page and move them back to the received status. So that's how you move them to the not invited status. And then from there, if you are still conducting your jury and you want the jurors to continue scoring, you would have them at this point continue scoring, and you can either have them stay in round 1 if they want to see their current scores, or change the round to 2 so that they have a clean slate on their scorecards. So that's how to conduct that first round. Let's say you have put everyone into the not invited status and everyone that's left is ready to go. And those are the folks that you're going to be inviting to your event or for your exhibition. Then you'll come back here to the manage page and go to change status to invited. And you'll see that this page looks a lot like it did before. Again, select all of your categories first. Here, instead of a minimum cutoff, you have a maximum cutoff. This was what used to be called the invite threshold. Here, because you're changing the statuses to invited, you're going to set a cutoff score so that all entries with a score above that score will be moved to invited. So it's just an inverse of what you did on the other page. The default for this number is 0 because most folks, when they get to this page, are ready to just move all of the entries that are left to the invited status because they have already moved everyone else to the not invited. So since it's set to 0, this just means that any entry with the score above 0, therefore everyone, will be moved to invited. The only exception to that is if the juror didn't provide a score for the entry and the entry just doesn't have a score associated with it, it wouldn't be included here. It'll simply just be left in the receive status until you either move it manually or until the juror provides a score. So you can come in here and change the maximum cutoff score if you want. If you're doing the process a little bit differently, maybe you're coming here first, and instead of moving the lower score to invited, not invited first, you're just going to say, I want to move everyone with a really high score to invited, in which case you would come to the maximum cutoff score, and you want to say anything above, for example, a 2, I want to move ahead. My example is not going to change much here, but anyone above a 3, perhaps, you can move this application if you know that's how you're conducting it. Again, the process is the same. Once you've set your maximum cutoff score, or you could just leave it as 0, you'll click Show Applications. You'll see that out of 18, we're going to have 18 moving to the invited status. Again, you can view the scores and the statuses, and you can update the status here if you want it to be something different. And once you're done, you just go ahead and click Change Status. Once that's done, you'll see that everyone has been moved to the invited status. If you come back to the jury page and you click View Applications, you see that there's no applications found. That's good. That means all of your entries are now sorted between the invited and not invited statuses. If you do still have entries on this page, that means they don't have a score yet, and you need the juror to score it or just move it if you know if it's going to be invited or not invited. You can change the status. That's the process on their Manage page to sort your entries between invited and not invited. The last section I'm going to show you today is the Finalize tab. Once you've finished everything in the Manage tab, you can go on and move to this tab. This tab basically shows you each of the steps you need to take to wrap up your call once you have your jury results. First, there's the Go to Emailer button, and as you can see with their instructions here, once you've made your final selections, you'll notify the artist of the jury results. So in order to do that, you need to go to the Events Communication tab, and you'll just see that when I click on Go to Emailer, it takes you to the Events Communication tab. Again, this is another page that is not updated now, but will be when the changes go live. So when you click it, it'll take you to that page, and that's where you send your email to the batch of not invited and your email to the batch of invited. Once you've done that, you can return here if you want. And your next option is to download your scoring history. This is what I said before, where you could go to this page, then choose which round you want to download the scores from, and it'll show you the scores and allow you to download the spreadsheet. I'm not going to go to that page now since we're still working on it, but that's the same as before, actually, is that download scoring option. You don't have to do that, but if you'd like to have the scores on hand, or maybe you want to download the comments given by the jurors, maybe, for example, the juror notified in the comments of any award or prize winners, that's when you'll want to download the scoring history report to identify those entries that are winners. The last item on this page is the Go to Setup button. So essentially, this is just a reminder that once you're done with your jurying and you've notified the artists in the emailer, you'll come back here and it just reminds you to change your jury status to complete. So when I click on this, you'll see that it just bounces back to that setup page and prompts me to go to change my jury status to complete. Once the jury status is set to complete, at that point, the statuses, whether or not they're invited or not invited or waitlisted, that's when the results will be published and now visible to the juror, or not to the jurors, to the artists on their side. So up until this point in the jury process, they haven't been able to see whether or not we're changing it to invited or not invited. But now that we've emailed them, we come here and we publish those results by changing it to complete. This Finalize tab doesn't really have many tools in itself, but it's essentially a nice reminder of your workflow of what you need to do once you have your results to email them, download the scores if you want, and then change your jury status. Don, I see your question. Could I review the scorecard once again? I can review the scorecard names. I'm not going to be able to show you what the scorecards look like, but they haven't really changed from how they are. But just to reiterate, so we have slideshow view. Slideshow view is where it displays against a gray background, and the entries in a pop-up window are shown one after another in a slideshow. So it's like what used to be the monitor view. The juror pulls up the scorecard, they look at the entry, they look at the image, they give their score, they click save, and then they go to the next page of the slideshow. List view is what used to be called projection view, where it's against a white background. There's 20 entries per page. The juror scores each one. They score 20 at a time. They can save along the way. And then they click next and they go to the next list of 20 applications. So that was projection. And then grid view used to be gallery view. This is the one that's available to jury by artwork calls only. And it shows a grid of the 20 thumbnails where it's just the images that they're looking at. They can quickly go through the scores. If they want to, they can click to view the application information or the artist information. And then it just shows them 20 on a grid. Then they can go to the next 20 once they've done that. So again, this was monitor view, this is projection view, and this was gallery view. And when we release these changes, we'll update all of our help guides so that you know the differences between these three, I mean. Sharon, I see your question here. Our jurors will be selecting artists, but also 1 or 2 pieces from that artist from 3 to 5 images. Will the artist get a reject notice for the ones not selected and the other letter for those works selected? Yes. So let's say they submitted, 2 pieces, and 1 piece was invited and 1 piece was not invited. They will get 1 email that says, this piece was not invited. Then they'll get another email that says this piece was invited. This concludes our webinar series of the new interface and the new jury administration page. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be sure to join us in our final webinar that will talk about these changes next month.